We all know how building a business or climbing the career ladder came at the expense of relationships, of the growing up of kids, of the estrangement of the wife. People put themselves so much under pressure because they believe what they see. They believe the cars and the lifestyle. Those pressures, the result of that in the high suicide rates and isolation of men and so on and so forth. Work is a big escape route where men go.
It's the pressure to provide, to lead, to perform, to build, and to be present at home and keep going.
There are actually a lot of happy people out there, but there are also equally or probably more unhappy people out there because I think they're trying to meet the standards of society. They're trying to meet the expectations of the family or even the partner.
Muhami Matters with Chris Adams, powered by CJA Consulting.
Welcome to Muhami Matters, where credibility meets clarity in legal and professional services. I'm your host, Chris Adams, founder of Muhami and CJA Consulting. Today's conversation is about something that sits underneath performance, leadership, relationships, and for many professionals, burnout. We're talking about what happens when people look successful on the outside, but feel pressured, misaligned, or disconnected on the inside. For many lawyers, consultants, founders, partners, and senior professionals, the challenge is not just technical ability, it's the transition into responsibility. It's the pressure to provide, to lead, to perform, to build, and to be present at home and keep going, often without stopping to ask what all of this is costing them. My guest today is Anna Thiel. Anna is a Dubai-based mentor who works primarily with men, helping them move beyond the surface level issues and reconnect with who they are underneath the roles they carry. One of the ideas we're going to explore today is Anna's preference for the language of yin and yang, not as a gender debate, but as a practical lens for understanding structure, flow, drive, and presence, as well as performance and alignment. So today's conversation is about identity, leadership, pressure, and balance. Not really the shallow version of balance, but the deeper work of understanding where you might be operating in one gear and how to start changing it. Anna, welcome to Muhami Matters.
Chris, thank you so much for welcoming me. Thank you for the intro and thank you so much for having me.
You're most welcome, and I thank you for joining us. So for anyone meeting you for the first time, tell us a bit about who you are and what you do.
Okay, so my name is Anna Thiel, as you already mentioned, a mentor to men. And I love my work with men because I think there's not enough space out there where men can actually go and be heard and be seen and just be who they already are and also be guided into remembering who they already are. And this is kind of where I come in, where I create space and just do my contribution to, creating a more harmonious place, I guess.
So you're originally from Germany and you live in Dubai. How long have you been in Dubai for?
Yes, I've been here for 8 years now.
Wow, time flies and you're having fun.
Yeah, definitely. And it actually feels longer. I just feel really connected to it. So.
Yeah, I like the view behind you as well. It's it feels like Dubai. There's construction in one side and really well established in the other. So it just summarizes Dubai for me in one picture.
It does.
So tell us a bit more about who you typically work with. You mentioned men, obviously.
Yes.
But tell us a bit about how they come to you and where you start with.
Yeah, sure. So I'll just tell you a little story, which is, a lot of times, usually it's women asking me, how do you convince them that they should come and work with you? And how do you, convince them that they have a problem and that they should actually do some of the work? And I always say to them that I only work with the ones that, are ready and that find me. I don't convince anybody. I don't sell anything. So I'm just there. I'm just, obviously creating visibility for myself and, meeting people. But that's about it. So whoever they are profession-wise, it's, there's no red line. It can be anything. Like I work with people in the medical field, a lot of people in the wealth management field, in, top level, C-level owners of businesses, entrepreneurs. So it doesn't really matter what the profession is. I think it really only matters if that person is actually ready to look at, at things that could make life a little better or more comfortable or more peaceful or whatever it is, they're looking for.
Okay, as a generalization, us men are not always the most proactive to go and seek help when we need it. Is there a tipping point that your clients typically get to that brings them to you?
Yes and no. So sometimes it's, I'll meet the ones that are just fed up of it, and they're just at a point where they're like, no, something's got to change, and they realize that there's got to be more to this. And so they're open to actually working on things. And then on the other hand, also in just a casual conversation, it can be like, oh, actually, I never was aware of this. I never knew it was a problem. I never knew I could actually, change it. And then out of that conversation actually comes the realization that, oh, okay, well, maybe I'll have a look at it and see, if I can improve it. Or a lot of times I always say, you don't have to go it alone. You don't have to carry it alone. You don't have to go through it alone. So it's me as a guide is what crystallizes a lot of times out of a conversation where they were not even aware, oh, I'm actually actively looking for someone. But so you have both there.
And then do you find a lot of your clients, and again, we're talking quite generally here, and it's very difficult to generalize, but do you find that a lot of your clients open up quite quickly, or is it a lot of what you're exploring quite deep underneath?
Yeah, no, I do actually. I didn't know in the beginning when I set up also my packages and the way that I work. I thought I would have to leave some room for them to create that trust and, actually enter this room and know that it's a safe space. I thought it would take longer, but it goes quite quick. Once the person is ready, I think, it's. I don't want to think it's me, so I'm just saying as soon as the person is ready, I think, as I always say, as soon as the student is ready, the teacher will appear. So then they are understanding that I need to actually open up, otherwise there will not be any, change or difference or whatever you want to call it.
So it's a question that's probably reasonably obvious that people want to know, but what as a woman, do you feel like you have an advantage for working with men versus a man working with men?
Yeah. Or
does it no difference at all?
Yeah. So this is a funny one because I don't see myself as a gender working with a gender. I'm basically, obviously, human to human and beyond, but I don't feel that there's any advantage or disadvantage of me being a woman. It's just me who I am, having that love and compassion for men specifically, and then just working with them because that's what, I love doing and have so much experience in, and having grown up with, brothers and really being 3 boys and, just having always been in the male environment and also understanding men a lot of times over women has just, made it so obvious to me to work with men. But the question usually does come from outside, and I don't know how to answer it really, other than what I just did. I don't know if it's an advantage or a disadvantage. I mean, some men have told me that they prefer to open up to a woman and they feel more comfortable doing so. So maybe for them, it is, it does make a difference whether I'm a man or a woman.
Yeah, I think you're right. It probably doesn't really matter. Once you get over that, initial potential perception, I don't think it would be an issue because it is human to human advice, isn't it? And it's more about life experience and where you've come from. You work a lot, you mentioned, with high performing professionals who perhaps often feel they're falling short. Why do they feel that way when on paper they look like they're all conquering?
Wow, I'd have to actually already dive quite deep into that one. But I think a big part is society and the expectations that are being put on all of us really, but specifically, performance based is something that you hear everywhere. I mean, there's performance coaches, there's, performance this, performance that, optimizing that performance even, is like the latest thing with longevity or in the workspace or the balance of, life and work and all of that. And I think it already, starts in childhood. It's like, I don't know, you can think even about yourself, if you did something well, you got the love, right? So whether that was being good in sports or being good at school academically, or, doing something good in the eyes of somebody else who would then reward you with the love and affection or attention, made you, make that connection. Okay, so when I do well, I am treated well. I'm, acknowledged. I am somebody. I am an achiever. And so it goes and follows us throughout the whole life. And this is mainly, I know that there are women as well. And like you said, it's not easy to generalize, or we shouldn't be generalizing, but it is, it's primarily still men that are pushing themselves, thinking that, I have to perform, I have to do this, I have to be like this, and then I will be somebody, then I will get something. And I think that's, where it comes from. And it's really quite empty, because it's conditional. It's conditional. And anything that's conditional, will end up not feeling fulfilling, or actually give you a sense of purpose in life.
So what is the condition that you mentioned? Why is it conditional?
Because if you do something, then you will get something.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah. So and it's the same in the workspace. If you work really, really hard, you might get that promotion, and that gives you more money, and with that comes more lifestyle or whatever, status and so on and so forth. But it's not who you are.
Very true. Yeah, very true. So I was thinking along the gender gaps there of where men face these challenges that you mentioned, where, there is a lot of pressure on men, I think, to provide, to be the providers, to be the breadwinners. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like a paternal instinct where from the cavemen and cavewomen days, the women had the maternal instinct, and that's their job, to protect the family. Mm-hmm. And it was the man's job to hunt and gather.
Yeah.
And so,
and when you say this to some women, they will remind you that there were also women hunters and gatherers.
Undoubtedly. But I guess, it's kind of, I guess my point is it's ingrained into us.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you. I'm saying that the majority was men who did the hunting and the gathering and the,
yes,
taking the animals apart and all of that.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And we can't do a lot of what women can do as far as, feeding the babies and all that sort of stuff. So it has to be, they have to have that role, right? You have to go and gather the food. Yeah. Well, so I do think that's in us. It's in us all, because, as a man underneath it all, no matter how much you push it away, you want to be the provider. You just have that inbuilt into you. It's not necessarily a cultural thing, but it's ingrained. So do you find that with a lot of the men that come to you, that there is that, that, I guess, that frustration or that desire to be the provider and just not always being able to do it?
Yes, definitely. Because also, I wanted to add to what you just said, that it's so ingrained in us, and it's not only cultural, it is cultural though, and it is society. And yes, some factors, like you said, feeding the babies, if we're talking on a purely natural way, only women can do that. It's just a fact. And, other things that, if a man is physically stronger, there will be some things that only they can do, and the man should be providing, and there should be roles. Yes and no. At the end of the day, when people ask me for my personal opinion, I always say it's whatever works for that, because I also work with couples. So I'm like, whatever works for you guys, for you too. No matter what I say, I don't, I never tell people what to do anyways, or what society says, or what they've been taught, or what their families are expecting. It doesn't matter. It is whatever works for those two people in the relationship. So if it works for both of them, for, the woman to be the financial provider, for example, and the man to be at home and looking after the kids and the house and everything, then that's totally fine. Who's to judge that that's not the way it should be, right? If those two people decide that's how they want to do it. Or there's even phases, sometimes it's like there'll be like phases of, maybe a woman wants to take her career forward, and then she's at a certain point, and then it switches again. Then he's doing that and she's staying at home. There are numerous examples of how daily family life can actually work and is working for a lot of people. And there are actually a lot of happy people out there, but there are also equally or probably more unhappy people out there, because I think they're trying to meet the standards of society. They're trying to meet the expectations of the family or even the partner or even themselves, because, they've sold themselves. That's how it has to be. But at the end of the day, it needs to be whatever is working for those two. And then if it's not working for one, which is usually the case, it's not working for one of them, I guess it needs, a communication and also kind of belief systems and things that we've told ourselves and sold ourselves. Is it okay for me to be that? Or, if I am that, then what will society think? Or what will my family think? And remove yourself from, those kind of stories, I think, that we tell ourselves.
So when you have a man come to you or a couple, you position yourself as a mentor. What role do you play as a mentor? What's the outcome that you're looking for to help your clients with?
So I'm just going to answer that with regards to couples. So I'm always the neutral factor in it. It's almost like, there's a lot of mediation, obviously. Also, I don't really have them sit in front of me, at least not all the time, and say, oh, but she said always and he's always doing that, that kind of, I'm not there for that. I work with both individually, and yes, we do get together because, I need to first gather where we're at and then see where we can go, and then, see where it is going. At the end of the day, everybody's making their own decisions, and I'm always only the guide or the conduit or whatever you want to call it. And ultimately, for me, it's always to remind the man, and if it's couple, obviously both, who they already are. That for me is always the basis of everything that I do.
So how do you do that? How do you remind them of who they really are? I guess it is something that's ingrained into them, that it's hiding underneath the surface. Is that right?
Yeah.
How does it come out?
Yeah, it's definitely. I mean, we, depending on where the person is at and how open they are and how, obviously I'm measuring temperatures all the time to see, okay, how far can I take it? And I'll never push. I'm the opposite to this. We got to just push through and you just got to do it. And, all of that. I think we have enough of that. So I'm quite the opposite. I have been told that, I am also I can be quite strict or quite forward, but always only ever with the suggestions and always ever from that place of love where I already know that, the person is so much more than his status or his money or his whatever he's living or whatever he's telling himself. So we'll, we always have a deep look at what is the person telling or selling himself, who he thinks he is. Does he think he is his profession? And what is he without his profession? And so there's a lot of, it's very deep work, I would say.
So on the back of that, when we first met, you used a phrase of remember who you already are.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about what that means to you.
Yeah, I think is what I just mentioned, is that the experience, the society, the ideas that society is portraying, that it's selling us on social media from a young age. I mean, if you look at, we both have kids, and if we think of, if we had to let them loose on social media and all those conflicting, informations and point of views and how girls have to be, how boys have to be, and then beyond that, but, for me, it's just like, in my work, I'll just do boys and girls or men and women. But we know that there is so much more out there, and there's so much confusion out there, and there's so much misinformation. And not because I'm judging to say, oh, that information is wrong or that is right. At the end of the day, we all need to make our own decisions and are only responsible for ourselves. But, kind of removing all of those layers is probably what I could say summarizingly to remember who you already are under all of those experiences and expectations, and what life is expecting you to be, or is telling you to be, or not to be.
Do you find that a lot of those you work with struggle to separate their personal and their professional lives?
Yeah, that's what I just said. So many people think they are their job, even if they introduce themselves. I'm an accountant, I'm a CEO, but that's what you do. You choose to do that as a profession, but that doesn't make you. That doesn't make you who you are. And then also, if you think that's what it does, then what if that falls away? And that is one point where, I have a lot of clients that don't want another promotion. They don't want another business. They don't want another 10 million. It's more about, okay, what else is there? And, what can I maybe leave behind? What is the legacy that I can build? What's something that I can give back? So there's a lot of questioning oneself and a lot of truth that, comes up. And that's why people do have to be ready to actually look at all of that. But at the end of the day, the results are always worth it.
I'll bet. Yeah, I bet you must have to do a lot of listening, I think, and I guess some probing.
Yeah.
But there must be just a lot of listening and letting people just get their thoughts out on the table.
I can tell you, yes, it is. And also, sometimes even that is already, I don't know how to say it, but even if I just listen without judging, without fixing, without using it against the man again, even that alone just makes such a big difference already. And it's obviously sad. I mean, I'm glad I can be that space, but it's sad that men don't have that, with their wives or friends or at home with their families or whatever the case may be. And I think we need to create more of that, more of those spaces.
So why do you think they don't have that space?
I think, again, it's conditioning and programming, or whatever you want to call it. It's boys that grow up and are told to not cry, and that their emotions don't matter, and that they have to be strong, and showing emotions is a weakness, and being vulnerable will make them weak or easy to attack, and so they don't. But those things don't go away. Emotions are still there, and if they don't get expressed, then they kind of implode or explode, or suppressed, oppressed feelings, they just don't go away. They're still in the person. But I think that's why that's why it's happening. And also it is I know, again, we cannot generalize, and I'm very pro man, and it is a lot of women that will probe, and then once he does share, they will say, oh, what's the problem? I don't see a problem with that, because they don't. But the man has already either, has kept quiet for a while, or has swallowed a lot, and then finally comes out with it, and then he gets a slap, and it's being belittled. Or he will open up in a vulnerable state or whatever, and then in the next fight she will use it against him. I've not met a man that has not confirmed that experience.
That is pretty horrible when you think of it like that. I'm guessing there's not a lot of malice or intent necessarily there, or maybe there is. Those are probably the very bad relationships, but there probably isn't in general a lot of malice or intent from a woman in that situation, or a partner in that situation. But yeah, it's very sad that the other side of the relationship's not recognizing those signs.
Yeah, definitely. It is sad, but it is a fact also.
Yeah.
And so we can only focus on, okay, what now? What do we focus on? How do we change it?
So what do men themselves then focus on to I guess, they get that situation where perhaps they've been shamed or they've come out with it, exposed themselves and then been knocked back? How do they react? What do they do next? They throw themselves into work, or what do they do?
Well, first of all, they keep quiet and they're not sharing anymore, at least not with her. And unfortunately, there's still too little spaces where, men can share amongst each other. I mean, actual, brotherhoods or man circles or whatever, and not just guys getting, drunk on drinks or whatever and telling each other, oh, you'll be all right, because that's not helping anybody. It's still keeping, if you had to go with friends and you actually wanted to share and that's all you get, because neither of you have actually learned how to hold space for each other, how to be there for each other, how to, hold each other accountable, whatever it is, because everybody's kind of grown up in the same society with the same generation parents and grandparents and all of that. Obviously, again, not all the same, but a majority of it. And then you won't have that. So yes, work is a big, big, big escape route where men go. And, then it's also other things like other women, gambling, the gym. Lots of people use the gym as, as a form of therapy or instead of therapy. Therapy means like any, it can be a mentor or a therapist or a psychologist or whatever, but actually somebody to look at these things with or life at. So yeah, they will escape themselves into things, porn, doom scrolling, gaming, you name it. And it's provided.
But yeah, there has to be some kind of outlet, I guess. There has to be some sort of outlet. You can't just keep it all in or you'll explode.
Yeah, exactly. And those that do keep it in explode. And then it's called aggression. And then that's the only kind of acceptable emotion a man is allowed to show. So there's not much room for you guys to actually go.
Yeah, I don't even know. I'm just listening to what you say. I don't even know why this is a societal thing. It's just the way that we've all been brought up, or if it's there's just not those facilities available, or if I guess it's just the nature of sometimes women are better at naturally supporting each other and going out in groups and communicating with each other and being a bit more open with each other, a bit more supportive than what men sometimes are. I guess it's a whole mix of everything.
Yeah, I think it's, if you think of, and I don't know, actually none of us know a lot of things, but if you think back of just the hunting days, which is pretty much kind of where we are coming from in the way that we are today as a Homo sapiens. Yes, we had the women hunters and gatherers before somebody comes and, comments on that. But the majority was men, and the majority was women staying in the camps or whatever they're called, with the kids, with each other, supporting each other. I always say, or they say, it takes a village to raise a child, and I always say it takes a village to be a human. But it was usually the women with each other. So they would be sitting and talking whatever language they used back in the days. But it was that, togetherness. And then on the other hand, if you see the men hunting, usually also in groups, but they couldn't really talk that much because they were not supposed to make any sounds because they wanted to catch the animals, right? So that would be a very primal explanation of why maybe it could be this way. However, I don't think that, and a lot of people also ask me, how do you get the men to talk? They don't talk. I cannot confirm that because they do talk. When they have a space where they feel safe, there's lots of talking taking place. So for people to say, oh, women talk a lot and men don't talk, I would not sign that because in my own experience, it's very different. But it's about that safe space. And I think that's the difference.
It is quite interesting. I'm thinking about it as you're saying it. I'm thinking just of, a good Australian tradition to have a barbecue. And it is, and again, a generalization, but you will have the women, the mothers in the kitchen sitting around having a drink, preparing salads, a very communal thing. And you will have the men sort of outside on the barbecue preparing the meat, I guess, and talking, but it's much more, there's much less noise coming, I guess.
Yeah.
So as much as some people may deny, it's just the kind of the way it is.
Yeah.
We are different. You talk about, I think, yin and yang versus masculine and feminine. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I just used that for a while, actually, just to take it away from the gender, because I know that there are also, because otherwise you'll just immediately think, if you say, a man has feminine traits, it's easy for people to think, then maybe he's gay, or maybe it's like he's like a woman, or he's wearing makeup or whatever, and that will make him less of a man. It's the only reason why I kind of took that away, because I was just, speaking specifically on characteristics that are yin and yang, or, masculine and feminine traits. But the words are being used so nonchalantly as well on social media, and people will just have like immediate pictures of it. This is one of the reasons why I, replaced it with different words. But the concept is the same. There's just some characteristics that we all have. We all have those two energies within us. And I just feel that, a lot of women had to bring out the more, assertive side, the more like doing, the more structure, all of that. And the men have just either, on the one hand, they've become a lot of, those softer qualities, which puts them into one corner, or they're completely avoiding them because they think, oh no, it's going to make me look a certain way. But really, we should all embrace that we have both, and all of the qualities and all of the traits that we can, easily use in different situations. And it's just as an example, I like to say that, I see that women are really struggling if they're in that one role during the day, to then actually switch and get into a bit of the other role. And, and no man wants another man in women's clothes in his relationship. So, it's just that both of us, men and women, could embrace all of the qualities that come with those energies.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting perspective. And what was poignant about that, most came out to me was we all have both of those masculine and feminine qualities within us. And I guess it's which ones we bring out.
And also,
but it did make me think of...
And also, sorry to interrupt you, what I wanted to just add to that is feminine energy, if we use that term, it doesn't mean only soft and slow and, homemaker, any kind of those things, because we do know that also in history there were a lot of warrior women. It does also, there's an immense strength behind that feminine energy, and so on and so forth. So it's not so black and white. It does come, both energies have an array of traits that represent them.
Yeah, I agree with you, and it brings me to thinking about the modern family, I guess, especially modern Western families, where women, I think, have been encouraged a lot to. There's been a lot of focus in the workplace on women and women's rights, and enabling women and making sure that they can achieve their potential. And you could argue sometimes that it's been at the detriment to men, I think. Well, particularly I think boys. When I look at, I'm glad I've got two daughters and not two sons, for example, because I do think sometimes that boys in school at the moment just don't get the opportunities or the attention perhaps that they need, that the girls are getting. We have put so much behind girls. And it's not bad that we have done that, obviously, but it doesn't mean true equality, does it? It doesn't mean that men and women are equal. It's just trying to push one above the other more forcefully, I guess, which is not ideal.
Yes.
And so I don't know how you feel about that, what you see about that in the clients that you work with.
Actually, well, besides the clients that I work with, I obviously have my eye on society, and I see, what's happening, and have lots of conversations. And I absolutely agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. And obviously it's quite controversial also, because, you can have both sides saying, yeah, but, it's been patriarchal so many, whatever, eons, and still is. And, it's good that there is that change. I think as humans are, the pendulum usually swings from one extreme to the other. It's like it never really rests in a middle, whatever the middle is. And, that's without judgment. It's just, looking at the facts. So now there's a lot of stuff for women. And this is one of the reasons why I got into my work with men, is because I thought there was so much for women. Lady boss and this and that and womb healing and sister circle and all of those things, which, yes, have their place. No doubt about it. And then it should have the equal amount of space and things and empowerment for men. And so I think it's very jaded, and it does have a long history, obviously. And if you had to look into, why it is this way, and probably have a lot of controversial views on it, my focus is more on, okay, what can we do about it? Like, how can we focus on the positive, on how to, create changes, how to make it better? This is where I come in with my little impact, that I can make as one person. And, even you should, like, I should probably go and speak in schools and speak to teenage boys and, kind of let them know that there's nothing wrong with them. And, it's like, it should be equal between both. And I see and hear that there are so many things that are there for girls that are not there for boys. And it should just be equal. It's not about, is it good that there's so much for girls or women or not? It's like, no, let's just have the same for both. That's my view. And I believe also, if you focus on the problem, or, you keep getting into certain things, it's just going to prevail. It's not actually going to make it better, as opposed to popular opinion, It's going to become better, whatever that is, if you look at, okay, and now what? Like, what do we do with it? How can we improve, make changes, or whatever?
Yeah, I think empowerment is actually the key word you use there. So we have been empowering women, and rightly so, empowering girls, empowering women, because there hasn't been enough in the past. And we need to make sure we're empowering these boys as well. These boys that are coming through, making sure they're also empowered.
Yeah.
Which is what you're doing, I think, which is really fantastic. Everyone needs to be empowered.
Thank you. Yeah, I totally agree with you. And empowering would actually mean that they are without power, but they're not. But that would probably go too deep. But yeah, both should be have equal spaces and voices for them.
So how do you think this is showing up in professional life? For example, I guess for both genders, regardless of gender, through control or overwork or emotional shutdown.
How is what? Sorry, what was the? How is what?
I guess the pressures that we're all feeling, that both men and women are feeling, because I think that there is an imbalance. There is an imbalance of empowerment, perhaps, and it's been perhaps a detriment to both genders, even though we don't like to differentiate. But because you find now that you've got, at least if I look around at the people I'm friends with, both parents work generally. But the mother still feels that obligation to do the motherly things, in inverted commas. They still have that same responsibility. Responsibility hasn't dropped off. At the same time, I guess a lot of the fathers I've seen have had to pick up extra responsibility, because it's not just, they're not the only ones working anymore, not the only ones bringing home the bacon, bringing home the money. So, but society, I feel, hasn't sort of adjusted for both, because you've got overworked women who are coming home and trying to then fulfill that traditional role. Yeah. And you've got the men who are trying to fulfill that traditional role, but aren't always necessarily looked after enough to do that. So yeah, I'm just wondering how this shows up in professional life.
Yeah, I think
control over work.
I think both are not looked after enough, as you just mentioned so rightly, or so eloquently. So if, for example, if you're thinking of home life, because the corporate world yes, there are women in higher positions, so on and so forth, but it is still strongly male dominated. So, I'll just leave that one there for a while. But if you're thinking of home life, as you mentioned, both partners are working and they still have children and they still have responsibilities. And then it's kind of like who's doing what, which is kind of, going back to what I said earlier on, is like it takes communication, which is a massive factor that is not being used to its full potential within relationships. Takes communication on, how to actually do this, because couples these days are actually, and I don't like victim mentality. However, society is the way that it is. It's structured the way it is. If you want a certain lifestyle, it's almost impossible in the mainstream of the Western world to have that without both working. And so they kind of have to, and it's not even about luxury. It's about, having like a decent, comfortable life. Most need to work. Most partners where both sides need to work. Yeah. So that is something that, yes, people can always choose and so on and so forth. However, the masses are working, both of them, and then they need to now find their way with each other in that system that they are just living in. So I think there's a big factor of, okay, it is how it is. There's no use on, going victim about it, but it is how it is. And it might not be ideal, but it is how it is. And so within that, how do we find the best way that works for you and me? And that takes communication. It probably takes work, because I always say when two people meet, it's not two people meeting, it's two stories meeting. And so, you as a man will come with certain expectations from yourself, from society, from your parents, and the woman will come with the same. And so you guys need to actually, find a way on how it can work for the both of you. And whether that's, you doing the dishwashing machine and she's doing the lawn mowing or whatever, it's like, it depends on who wants to do what within each relationship. Yeah, I hope that.
Yeah, I think as long as professionally that's understood in a professional environment, then that's all good. I think what I'd argue is it hasn't always been supported. Both genders haven't been supported together enough in a professional environment in the past. So hopefully we can move towards that, where you can basically navigate life and balance it out, home life and professional life, no matter who you are or what gender you are or whatever.
Again,
so that there is, everything works seamlessly.
Absolutely agree with you. And again, it's about what do we do with this? Yeah. So it's like what is it that works for us? And also it would be, let's normalize certain things. Yeah. Let's normalize men being at home and doing the house, the kids, without judging. There's no failure in that. There's no, he's not providing. Provision, by the way, is not only financial from either side.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of provision that is emotional safety that is so much more important than any money could be. And I see this in relationships all the time. He's providing the financial, but she actually wants the emotional safety. She couldn't, I'm not saying she couldn't care about the money, because we all like it and we need it in this, Western society. But a lot of times it's just so misaligned. And then let's normalize also women going to work and having a career without calling her masculine or without, demonizing her because she wants more than just being at home with the kids and so on and so forth. And I think that's what it needs, is to change that narrative within society and within communities worldwide, or at least in the Western world.
I agree. Yes. Yeah, I completely agree with you. So let's think that back over to professionalism then, and the pressures that people come to you about from professional life. So why can promotions and leadership roles be destabilizing even for very capable people?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Why can promotions and leadership roles be very destabilizing even for very capable people?
Oh, okay. I think it's because it creates sometimes unhumanly pressures. I mean, some some positions expect so much of that person, and talking about men, obviously, in my context, is it's taking all of it out of them. We all know how building a business or climbing the career ladder came as the expense of relationships, of the growing up of kids, of the estrangement of the wife, and so on and so forth. So I think it's unfortunate that it seems to be a choice. It's either or. And it's a really, really, I think it takes someone to actually, a man, to look at himself, his belief system, his growing up and all of that, and manage that kind of, to be able to manage the pressures that come from both sides. Because, I have so many men that are super successful, and then they have, besides the fact that, relationships go down the drain a lot of times, but it's also about, you're never there. You're always working long. You're not there on the weekends. You're not there in your head. You're there physically, but in your mind, you're somewhere else. So it's like whatever they're doing, it's not the right way. So they're working hard to provide this life, but then that's also getting criticized because now you're not here with the kids, with me, date night, so on and so forth, So it's like, wow, what do I do? Like, how can I actually get it done and get that balance, which is, I don't want to say it doesn't exist. And obviously it's different for everyone. And what I do notice is that a lot of men actually become aware that they want to spend the time with their kids. They want to even, have some time at home where they, like for a few years, they maybe stay at home, or they, don't go out to drink and do all those work functions and rather spend time with the family. But you have to have that awareness. You need to know that there is a way. You don't need to do everything that your boss is asking of you, or, you don't need to do it in a certain way to build your business, because that's how it's been done for decades. There is differences, but for that you would, have to kind of open your mind, or, work with somebody that can offer different ways of doing things. And I think that's why if you don't have those pressures, we see the result of that. We see to the extreme the result of that in the high suicide rates and isolation of men and so on and so forth. Yeah, that's all. Usually a lot of it is because of those expectations and roles and pressures.
So is that a big part of your role, is to try and relieve some of that pressure that men are putting on themselves when they come to you and speak, and you give them that outlet?
Yeah. Also,
is that your role to basically help them to not just have the outlet, but then actually make a change?
Yes, exactly. Because I'm not about, let's talk about the problems again and again and again. I'm very solution based, which is probably a very masculine trait that I carry within myself. But yes, also having that, just providing that safe space where they can actually go, oh my God, it's too much. It's too much. But I cannot show because I'm the leader, I'm the CEO, people are looking up to me, I have all these responsibilities, so on and so forth. So yes, definitely a part of it. So
you talked about making changes, and there's possibilities to make changes. One thing that people can do is, I guess, move from being an expert. So a lot of people who listen to this podcast are professionals. So they're lawyers and they're doctors and accountants and coaches, and a lot of people that you would have as clients. And they grow up being, professionally grow up being those experts. But then, at one point either start their own business or become a partner in a firm or a business where they go from being an expert to actually being responsible for running a business.
Yeah.
Where do you see those pressures on people then just getting more and more and more?
Yeah, because also that one is actually a very popular one. So climbing the career ladder, if somebody was a very good project manager, doesn't mean he's a very good CEO. He needs to, there's some work to be done. I don't like to use the word work because it's so, a lot of people see it in a negative way, but just like you're changing the position, which comes with, different perks that you're getting as well. you also need to like change something on yourself, not fix it, because I don't believe you guys are broken, just adjust for that position. And then, be able to maybe deal with those pressures better, or actually fulfill that position, in a satisfying way, and not at the cost of everything, your relationships, your health, big one, health. Yeah.
Are there consistent patterns then that you see with the people that come to you from a professional perspective?
With regards to?
I guess the issues they come to you with, or the solutions that they need. You say you're very solutions driven.
Okay.
I'm sure it's bespoke for everybody. But
Yes.
Is there a common theme or themes that you see?
Health issues are almost always there, and I'm just it can be anything. I mean, headaches, or with men even erectile dysfunction, or libido issues, or whatever. Overweight, lots of those and beyond. And then also, I think the pressure or the pressures usually of balancing the work responsibilities with the home responsibilities. That one is definitely a common one. So stress of those pressures is most probably the most common one. And then also kind of lack of purpose, which they don't know that's what it is. So, they'll buy another house, another watch, another car, another woman, whatever, and just never have that. It's validation on the outside, yeah? And they never feel it inside. But they don't know that's what it is. So they'll come and say, oh, I always attract this same kind of woman. Or, I have so many things, but people misuse me or whatever, so it'll be something completely different, which happens a lot of times, by the way. Some people come with this, and then it's actually something completely different. So yeah.
But it sounds like the underlying thing there is a lack of fulfillment in one way or another. They're not being fulfilled, and they're constantly seeking that validation, that fulfillment.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
And do you think then how do responsibility and expectations that either are put on men or that men put on themselves in a professional environment affect decision-making and risk-taking and confidence?
I mean, if you're stressed, how good will the decisions be that you're making, right? If you are even maybe, taking medication or eating foods that are, maybe not the best option, you'll have brain fog. You'll be less, witty, quick, making clear decisions. Because also when you're under stress, it just feels like there's so many and you don't do anything, so you freeze. And then in the work environment, freezing is not a good thing. I mean, I don't mean body temperature. I mean, just like, not making a decision, stalling.
Yes.
Or, so it can have so many repercussions, whether you're a business and you need to be moving forward and you're not making those decisions, and then, losing out to maybe a competitor or whatever, or losing that position because you didn't make the decision, or you make bad decisions for the business, which is also not a good, it's not very, very good for success, I shall say, whatever success is. And so, yeah, it does. I mean, those kind of things, they definitely influence the decision-making, the risk-taking. If you are scared, you don't take risks, or you take the wrong risks. Also, if you don't have peace at home, or you never have a place where you can actually just, recharge in whichever way, you will have so many decisions. And also, this is another one, men are supposed to provide at home. So So they are out all day, working all day. I'm just clichéing right now, okay? Working all day, coming home, then they still need to decide what we're going to eat, where we're going to go, what we're going to do, because women want that, right? They want the man to make all the decisions. And so he's like, okay, where do I actually not have to make those decisions for a bit? Where can I just take a breather? Where can I just... So, a lot of times is that when they work more or even stay in the office longer just to not go home. And I mean, there's so many scenarios of those things. And yes, it does I mean, stress is probably the biggest impactor of anything, really.
So overwhelm, isn't it? That's what I'm hearing, a lot of overwhelm. It's just, if you, as you say, if you be making decisions all day as a professional, as a leader, and then you have to come home and make more decisions in your personal life, I guess regardless of gender, but it's a lot.
Yeah.
But you just can't take it.
Yeah, it is a lot.
Yeah.
It is a lot. And yes, I know we include the women that also do that, but it's just a lot because it is still a lot of men. So it is the majority of men having to do so. And then it's just overwhelm. And then where do they go? Where do they go and tell somebody, oh my God, it's too much. Like, I don't know what to do, and there's very, very, very few spaces, whether that's myself or I'm a big advocate of actual, men's groups or men's circles where they are there to say, it's okay. I'm here, share with me, whatever. And this is just not happening. We have a lot of men's groups that go out into, the party and all of that. That's not what I'm talking about. Or even golf groups. I did a speech the other day in front of a group and I said, you guys can you can play golf for 5 hours, solve 3 different business problems, speak about the global economy, and not exchange one sentence on how you actually feel, what's going on in your head or your heart. And that is the reality. And it's not because guys don't trust each other, but because they just haven't been taught to do that or how to do that, or rather still have been taught that, no, don't do that, because now you're showing weakness and he might take advantage of you and so on and so forth,
Is that a generational thing? Do you think that's changing as the younger men are coming through now, or is it still prevalent?
Yes and no. So I think the younger generation is getting lost in social media and the role models they find there, shall I say. And yes, there are also both genders in the younger generations that are more aware of what do they actually want in life, how do they go about it. Then there's a lot of different ways of going about it these days. So yes, I think it's changing, but I also see the pendulum swinging the very opposite way again. So, then you have the other extreme of they're not doing anything anymore. They're not providing at all. They, don't want to do anything, don't want to work, don't want to just, want to chill at home and play games all day. I mean, that is the extreme, but it is a very, very, very large demographic in the world right now of those ones as well. But I think, let's say maybe in around their 30s, it's changing. That's the generation that is the one that maybe has the biggest change, I think.
Interesting. Yeah, interesting. Let's hope so. Let's hope so for the sake of balance. So you've said earlier that your work's not really about quick tips or time management hacks or hustle culture, and it's very bespoke. So
yes.
What are the signs that men need to recognize in themselves, I guess, that it is time to come and see someone like you, to come and see a mentor for men or get some help?
Well, I guess some of the examples that we spoke about earlier on, which is, when they feel that there is no clarity, when clarity is not there, not only on decision making, like not being able to actually take clear decisions, but on life generally, what is it that you want? What is it that you want your life to be like? I think we should, life is for living, right? So I think we should all be living and be happy and all of that. Maybe I'm, very optimistic. I've always been called too optimistic, but I think that's what it is for. And to put more focus on, okay, what is it that actually fulfills me and what makes me happy, and not what other people expect of me or what should be doing, or now because I've studied this, now I have to do it, and all those kind of things. So yeah, that lack of clarity, feeling that, success doesn't feel like it used to feel. It's kind of losing its, it used to be, like maybe the first million was like, oh, amazing. But then the 10th time is like, okay, is that all? Is there more to this? Or, is this it? Or seeing that relationships are falling apart is probably a big one. Becoming aware that kids grow up very fast. You and I know that. And, that childhood is very, very short. And I don't like to say life is short, but the childhood is, what is it, 10 years? As opposed to the other years of adulthood. But just when they're not feeling right, when they feel like something is off, they're not kind of coming out of bed and thinking, yes, I have another day. Anything that's not that, I think, has probably got like a little something that can be adjusted and life can be so good. And when they feel it's too much, it's okay to not be okay. And it's also okay to say, listen, I'm overwhelmed. Like, I don't know, I have this. A lot of times it can also be a lot of drama, which has been created, and it's always got a rat's tail. Everything is always connected, and you take care of a few screws, and then the rest will fall into place. I think that stress, burnout, unhappiness in the marriage, not being appreciated in a relationship. That's also a very, very big one. Been married for decades, and it's just like it. Marriage is kind of meh. Kids have been there. Maybe now kids have left, and now what? What do I do with this person? That happens a lot too. Then keeping up with the Joneses, especially here in Dubai, it's a very big one. Everybody thinks, oh my God, he's doing so much better than me. He's driving this car and his wife just got this handbag and so on and so forth. But behind the scenes, most of the time, it's not what it seems. It's what it seems. Yeah. But people put themselves so much under pressure because they believe what they see. They believe the cars and the lifestyle and so on and so forth. So, yeah.
I was going to ask you to narrow it down to one thing that people have to look at this week and think about this week, but there is just so much in what you've just said. So I think that's a very difficult thing to ask of you.
I'll tell you one. I'll tell you one. If it was over tomorrow, would you say, yeah, I'm happy with how it went. I'm happy with where it's at. I can go. No regrets. No, I'm like, yep, it was a good one. And if it's not that, then maybe it's time for some thoughts.
So if someone did have those thoughts, then how can they reach out to you, Anna?
LinkedIn is probably the most popular way to reach out, because it's quite confidential as well. I have an Instagram account as well, and on my LinkedIn is also actually my WhatsApp, so I can be contacted via WhatsApp, and a call can be arranged, and we can have a conversation. No strings attached, just see where you're at, and and see if there is something you want to change or improve or whatever, and then take it from there, or not. Totally, how do you say it? Totally without commitment.
You have to start somewhere.
You have to start somewhere, yeah. And to have that conversation, it's like, it does take that first step. I mean, I always say, I can lead a horse to water, but I cannot make it drink. So somebody is listening to this and thinks, oh yeah, I found myself in a few points or even just one point, and take something away from it, I'm super happy. And if anybody wants to take it any further, please reach out to me, and we'll have just a easy conversation and find out if there's something we can do together.
Thank you, Anna. And I think what you just said, that you said a word, commitment, but with no commitment, that is probably music to a lot of men's ears, because for everything we just discussed today, there are so many decisions to be made in our daily lives, in our weeks,
yes,
at home, at work, wherever, and to be able to just make an easy decision where there isn't a commitment, there's no massive repercussions, I think is music to my ears, is music to a lot of men's ears.
Definitely.
I think so thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So thank you for joining us, Anna Thiel. Very much appreciated.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a wonderful conversation, Chris. Thank you so much also for the thoughts and the questions, and it was a pleasure.
You're most welcome. Something she's close to my heart is trying to help men professionally, personally, to be valued, to feel valued, and to feel important, and know they are very, very important to their families and to their loved ones, the people they work with, and they need to feel important to themselves. So we'll put the link to all your socials in the posts around this episode. So thanks again for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
To our listeners, I think today's episode is a reminder that success on paper is not always the same as alignment in life. And for many professionals, the real work's not simply doing more, optimizing more, or pushing harder. It's stopping long enough to ask what's really happening underneath the surface. If you're having those doubts, if you are resonating with these doubts, and is there something more out there, then sit there and think about it and take the next step. Reach out to Anna or someone like that who can help. Where are you operating in only one gear in life, and what would it take to bring more balance, honesty, and self-awareness into the way you lead, work, and live? And perhaps it'll bring you a bit more happiness as well. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe and share it with your network. For more insights and support, as always, visit muhami.ae. Connect with me at CJA Consulting. I'm Chris Adams. Until next time, stay empowered and stay informed. Until next time, stay informed and stay empowered. Thank you for joining us on Muhami Matters. If you found today's episode valuable, subscribe and connect with me to stay updated. Join me again soon as we continue to bring you credible insights, practical strategies, and trusted advice to empower your professional journey. I'm Chris Adams. Until next time, stay informed and stay empowered.